Hello everyone, this video is about a story, a very important one. It's a sad love story that anyone who's ever loved someone who didn't love them back can understand. And it has to do with the only two of the seven churches in Revelation chapters 2 and 3 that Christ didn't fault. This video does assume you have some knowledge of the two churches. If you're a beginner in studying the Bible, or if you're just someone who doesn't know about the two churches and happen to land on this video, there's no shame in that at all. I'd encourage you to check out the free videos and playlists on the Shepherd's Chapel YouTube channel. There's a playlist for new students, and every book of the Bible is taught straight through. Almost exactly 30 years ago, someone told me these lectures were the real deal. All this time later, I can say they really are. There is a real meaning of life to discover in the Bible's pages if they're just taught properly. It's truly life-changing. Personally, I believe our time is short and would urge people who haven't to start studying now. Now, please hit pause, stop yourself here, and say a prayer, whichever side of this story you're on. You may not even know there are sides with the two churches. Pray to understand, pray to discern, and pray to do what our Father moves you to do. People's lives and souls can depend on not being confused about who the two churches are while the Antichrist is here. And the Antichrist is, of course, Satan himself. My purpose in making this video is only this. I love our Father, and I love you, my brothers and sisters in both churches. My name is Jennifer. I'm a writer and not a video producer or a talker, so I apologize in advance for the lack of video production finesse. Hopefully it will get the message through, though. I'm a longtime student of Shepherd's Chapel. Our Father guided me to it in 1995, but this isn't a Shepherd's Chapel video. As anyone familiar with them knows, they have no affiliations. What I'm about to share comes from prayer and personal studies. There will be quite a few words from Strong's Exhaustive Concordance of the Bible in this video because word study is very important. The whole picture really won't be clear without listening all the way through to understand it, so I hope people will stay tuned to the end. It's also divided into sections so you can go through a little bit at a time if you need to. So what is this mysterious tale of the two churches? Who are they? Yes, they're Smyrna and Philadelphia, and they both know and teach an important truth missing from the other five churches of Revelation 2 and 3. But who are they? To what people living today do Christ's words to these churches apply? So back to the main subject. Who are the two churches? The short answer is that they're two segments of our Father's elect who make up our Father's house. At the Passover 2001 meeting in Branson, Missouri, there were two lectures that focused on the two churches. One is called Two Churches, and the other is called Wrath of God. The first one, Two Churches, started out.
Two churches. Very biblical, very serious, and something we all need to be made aware of.
So let's start with who and what makes a church. We all know the common belief that a church is a building or a denomination, but neither is the case in the biblical sense. Strong's Greek 1577 says the word translated church is a calling out, a popular meeting, especially a religious congregation, a Jewish synagogue or Christian community of members on earth or saints in heaven, or both. If we go back further to the root words, it's from a combination of Strong's Greek 1537 and a derivative of Strong's Greek 2564. 2564 gives the main meaning, and that is to call, properly allowed, but used in a variety of applications, directly or otherwise. Appendix 186 of the Companion Bible confirms the Strong's definitions. The Greek word ecclesia means assembly, or a gathering of called out ones. It's worth reading the whole appendix if you want to go further with that thought. So a church has little or nothing to do with the building. Christ is talking about different types of called out ones. The body of Christ is likened to the temple of old in the New Testament, but it's a spiritual temple and not a physical building like it was in the Old Testament. The Apostle Paul wrote to the Ephesians, "For through him we both have access by one Spirit unto the Father. Now therefore ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints in the household of God, and are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom all the building fitly framed together groweth unto an holy temple unto the Lord, in whom ye also are builded together for an habitation of God through the Spirit. In other words, God's elect are fellow citizens in the spiritual house of God. Christ is the chief cornerstone. The chief cornerstone of a building guides and orients the construction of the entire building. If it's off, the entire house is unstable. Only Christ can be that stone. The two churches, or assemblies of called out ones, make up the spiritual temple of these end times. As verse 20 said, the apostles and prophets are the foundation of that building. It's their words we read and study in the Bible, along with the New Testament now. The building has been growing over time into a holy temple in the Lord, with everything fitly framed as our Father sees fit. To further confirm that the temple of the end times is spiritual, here's what Paul preached on Mars Hill. God that made the world and all things therein, seeing that he's Lord of heaven and earth, dwelleth not in temples made with hands. Paul also told the Corinthians they were the temple of God. 2 Corinthians 6:16 says, "And what agreement hath the temple of God with idols? For ye are the temple of the living God, as God hath said, I will dwell in them, and I will walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people." So again, the temple we're building as Christ followers isn't a physical building, but a spiritual one. Christ is the head, the apostles and the prophets are the foundation, and the rest of us are being fitly framed together and growing unto an holy temple in the Lord. Our Father will finish that building, that temple, to stand against Satan when he's here as the Antichrist. Two of the temple segments right now are split into the two churches. Christ introduced the seven churches in Revelation chapter 1 and described them in the next two chapters. Chapter 1 orients us to the time frame, which verse 10 identifies as the Lord's Day. The Lord's Day is the first day of the millennium. So what we're seeing in Revelation 2 and 3 are the seven churches in their mature states, as God will see them at the end of this age. Many of us, myself included, believe that to be soon. Those seven churches exist now but haven't reached full maturity, but I believe they're close. So let's read Revelation 1, 10 to 13 to see who these seven churches are. Verse 10, I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and heard behind me a great voice as of a trumpet, saying, I am Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. And what thou seest write in a book, and send it unto the seven churches which are in Asia, unto Ephesus, unto Smyrna, and unto Pergamos, and unto Thyatira, and unto Sardis, and unto Philadelphia, and unto Laodicea. These are the seven churches Christ is getting ready to speak to. Again, he's only fully pleased with Smyrna and Philadelphia. Verse 12 continues, and I turned to see the voice that spake with me, and being turned, I saw 7 golden candlesticks, and in the midst of the 7 candlesticks was one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle. Christ explains who the stars and candlesticks are in verse 20. Revelation 1 verse 20 says, the mystery of the 7 stars which thou sawest in my right hand, and the 7 golden candlesticks. The 7 stars are the 7 angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 candlesticks which thou sawest are the 7 churches. So we have 7 candlesticks representing 7 churches. Each has an angel, and Christ is in the midst of them. Of the 7 churches in Revelation, Christ faulted 5 for sins and shortcomings that will keep them from understanding who Satan is when he's cast out of heaven as the Antichrist. Their lack of understanding will lead them to worship him. He leaves room for some of the church to overcome, but I believe there'll be few. Some of every church to overcome, but I personally believe there'll be few and far between in the 5 he faulted. The 2 churches he didn't fault, as we've said numerous times, are Smyrna and Philadelphia. Let's take a look at Philadelphia first, because that's the one people are probably more familiar with. Christ spoke a lot more to Philadelphia than he did to Smyrna. Philadelphia has a very strong purpose, which, as we'll see, is to teach and keep or guard the word of God. Anyone who's following this video will, with understanding, probably knows where the word is guarded and taught in its purity. Christ's words to Philadelphia start in Revelation 3:7, which says, "And to the angel of the church of Philadelphia write, These things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, he that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth." It's important here to note that Christ and not man, and not a church, holds the key of David. The key of David is very relevant to Philadelphia, though, because it's taught there. The key of David is about the true lineage of David, through whom Christ came in the flesh, and a false group who claim to be of that lineage but aren't. David was of the Israelite tribe of Judah. Christ uses that key to open the door to truth and understanding that flows from that knowledge. No man can shut that door when Christ opens it. Christ holds the key because man is imperfect. We can make the mistake of thinking someone is of the false lineage when they're of the true. This is going to be relevant to the church of Smyrna, so keep that thought. Revelation 3:8 continues, "I know thy works. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name." Christ says three things here about Philadelphia. It has a little strength. He didn't say a lot. It has a little. It has kept his word. That means guarded his word, and it hasn't denied his name. Christ loves Philadelphia in part because Philadelphia has kept his word in the sense of guarding it. The word kept is translated from Strong's Greek 5083. The essential meaning is to guard from loss or injury properly by keeping the eye upon. So this isn't about, keeping to his word as in obeying it. It's about guarding its word and its purity. On the Lord's Day, when the churches have reached maturity, those of Philadelphia will not have denied Christ's name because they know the word and they know Satan comes as the Antichrist before Christ returns. Continuing on with Revelation 3:9, "Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee." Philadelphia knows of the existence of the synagogue of Satan because the key of David is taught there. Knowing who the synagogue of Satan, those who say they are Jews and are not, but do lie, is what Smyrna and Philadelphia share in common. The other 5 churches in Revelation 2 and 3 lack this knowledge. Another important point in this verse is that Christ declares, "I have loved thee." Continuing on to verse 10, "Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I will also keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth." Here again, Christ mentions keeping the word, which we just talked about. The word patience is translated from Strong's Greek 5281, and it means cheerful or hopeful endurance or constancy. Because Philadelphia has guarded his word, Christ will guard Philadelphia from the hour of temptation or worshiping the Antichrist, who is Satan. Verse 11, "Behold, I come quickly. Hold fast that which thou hast, that no man take thy crown." Christ admonishes Philadelphia to hold fast that which thou hast. Those of Philadelphia have a crown waiting if they overcome, and no one has taken it. Him that overcometh, verse 12, "Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out, and I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my God, and I will write upon him my new name." The verse says, "Him that overcometh will receive these gifts." Christ doesn't fault Philadelphia, but he leaves room for those who have been associated with Philadelphia to not overcome. Those are unimaginable and beautiful rewards. Revelation 21 describes the eternal temple in New Jerusalem if you want to go check that out. So to wrap up Christ's words to Philadelphia in Revelation 3, verse 13 concludes, "He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches." We're going to do the Church of Smyrna in 2 parts. We need to introduce it and then investigate it a little bit and come back to it. Christ used a lot fewer words to Smyrna than Philadelphia, and that leaves Smyrna a more mysterious church. It requires a little more digging to get to the truth of who these folks are. Christ described the purpose of Philadelphia quite plainly. That's not the case with Smyrna. I'm going to use this section to introduce it, and then we'll go back into the Old Testament to see who they might be. Revelation 2:8 starts us off. And unto the angel of the church in Smyrna write, these things saith the first and the last, which was dead and is alive. Now hang on to that thought of which is dead and is alive. We're going to come back to it later. I know thy works and thy tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews, and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Smyrna, like Philadelphia, knows who those who say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan are. Christ said he knows their tribulation and poverty. So this is a segment of our Father's house that suffers in some way, and we're going to see how. He also said, but thou art rich. It's important to understand he didn't say that to Philadelphia. He told Philadelphia in Revelation 3:8, thou hast a little strength. Being rich in God's eyes is being rich in knowledge, wisdom, and spirit. And remember, Christ is looking at his churches on the Lord's day at the time when they're mature. Verse 10, fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. The devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. As with those of Philadelphia, those of Smyrna have a crown waiting for them if they overcome. It's specifically the church of Smyrna that Christ warns some of will be cast into prison. He didn't tell Philadelphia that they'd be cast into prison. We'll dig out why that is too. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. He that overcometh shall not be hurt at this second death. Christ doesn't mention the word at all to Smyrna. It's Philadelphia's job to teach and guard the word. It would be ignorant to say Smyrna doesn't know the word. They just have an entirely different purpose. So what on earth could be so important in this spiritual temple of the end times that's not the word? The answer lies in the type of servants in the Old Testament temple, which serves as a type for the spiritual temple of the end times we're building. The purposes of both churches are foreshadowed as types in those servants. Chapters 23 to 26 of 1 Chronicles describe the temple servants David appointed at the end of his life for the Temple of Solomon. The temple Solomon would soon build with God's blessing. David set out two groups of people in duty by name and course. Back then, temple servants came only from the Levites, descended from the Israelite patriarch Levi. There were three branches of Levites, descended from Levi's three sons, first written of in Genesis 46:11. And that says, and the sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Gershon is sometimes spelled with an N, and sometimes it's spelled Gershom with an M. These three branches of Levites were very important, even in the tabernacle before the temple, and they're still an important type. The Kohathites were always in charge of the most holy things. In the courses David laid out in 1 Chronicles chapter 24, the priests all came from the Kohathite branch, and more precisely from the sons of Aaron, who were a subgroup of the Kohathites. The high priest could only come from the sons of Aaron. Numbers 4:1 says, and the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, take the sons of Kohath from the sons of Levi, after their families by the house of their fathers, from 30 years old and upward, even until 50 years old, all that enter into the host, to do the work in the tabernacle of the congregation. This shall be the service of the sons of Kohath in the tabernacle of the congregation about the most holy things. The first group of temple servants that David laid out by name and course was that of the priests. The priests of the courses were all Kohathites and all sons of Aaron. The first few verses of 1 Chronicles chapter 24 explain that, and you can look that up to get a better understanding there. I think there are a lot of names there. Most of us know priests had ceremonial and sacrificial duties, but Christ fulfilled those statutes and ordinances. We don't practice them anymore. As Paul wrote to the Colossians in Colossians 2:13 and 14, and you, being dead in your sins and the uncircumcision of your flesh, hath he quickened together with him, having forgiven you all trespasses, blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. So no more ceremony today. But what did today's priests do? Another duty of the priests was to teach God's laws. When God gave the laws early in Israel's history, just after they came out of Egypt, there hadn't been any prophets like the ones who came later. And of course, there was no New Testament either. The only word they had were God's laws, and which God had given Moses for the people. It was a duty of the sons of Aaron to teach Israel the difference between the holy and the unholy, and clean and unclean. They were to teach the statutes of the Lord spoke to them through Moses. And the Lord spake, Leviticus chapter 10 says a little bit about that. And the Lord spake unto Aaron, verse 8, do not drink wine or strong drink, thou nor thy sons with thee, when ye go into the tabernacle of the congregation, lest ye die. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations. And that ye may put the difference between the holy and unholy, and between the clean and unclean and clean, and that ye may teach the children of Israel all the statutes which the Lord hath spoken unto them by the hand of Moses. Part of Moses' blessing to the tribe of Levi, which was the priest tribe, in Deuteronomy, just before Israel entered the promised land of Canaan, says in Deuteronomy 33:10, they shall teach Jacob thy judgments, and Israel thy law. They shall put incense before thee, and whole burnt sacrifice upon thine altar. So, yeah, teaching was a very important duty of the priests. By the time of 2 Chronicles 15, the physical temple had been built, and there was much more written. There would have been more for priests to teach. Teaching was a continual duty of priests. At the beginning of 2 Chronicles 15, we're going to see it's not a good thing to be without teaching. Verse 1 says, and the Spirit of God came upon Azariah, the son of Oded, and he went up to meet Asa, and said, hear ye me, Asa, Judah, and Benjamin. The Lord is with you while ye be with him. And if ye seek him, he will be found of you. But if ye forsake him, he will forsake you. Now for a long season Israel hath been without the true God, and without a teaching priest, and without law. And that's not a good thing. But when they in their trouble did turn to the Lord God of Israel, and sought him, he was found of them. Now we're going to jump forward to the time of the Second Temple period. There was a day when Ezra read the book of the law to the captives returned from Babylon in the newly rebuilt Watergate, around Jerusalem. 13 other priests stood with Ezra. Now Ezra was the son of the sons of Aaron. You can find that documented in Ezra chapter 7, verses 1 through 5. Ezra read the law to the people, both men and women, and he and the priests caused them to understand it. Here again we see that teaching was one of the duties of the priests. Let's read a little bit about what happened that day. Nehemiah 8:2 says, and Ezra the priest brought the law before the congregation of both men and women, all that could hear with understanding, upon the first day of the 7th month. And he read before the street that was before the Watergate, but from the morning until the midday. That's a long time of reading. Before the men and women, that those could understand, and the ears of all the people were attentive unto the book of the law. And Ezra the scribe stood on a pulpit of wood, which they had made for the purpose. And beside him stood Mattithiah and Shema and Ananiah and Urijah and Hilkiah and Maaseiah on his right hand, and on his left Pedaiah and Mishael, Malchiah and Hashem and Hashbaddanah, Zechariah and Meshullam. These were all priests. There were 14 priests in all standing at the pulpit, 6 on Ezra's right hand and 7 on his left. And Ezra opened up the book in the sight of all the people, for he was above all the people. And when he opened it, the people stood up. And Ezra blessed the Lord, the great God, and all the people answered, Amen, Amen, with lifting up their hands. And they bowed their heads and worshipped the Lord with their faces to the ground. Also Jeshua and Bani and Sherebiah, Jamin, Akab, Shabbathai, Hodijah, Maaseiah, Kelita, Azariah, Jozabad, Hanan, Peliah, and the Levites. Again, they caused them to understand the law, and the people stood in their place. So they read in the book of the law of God distinctly and gave the sense and caused them to understand the reading. So that duty of teaching should all sound familiar. All these years later, teaching our Father's Word is still the duty of the Church of Philadelphia. It keeps the priestly duty of the temple priests. The teaching continues through the millennium when the sons of Zadok, who are the elect, will teach the difference between the holy and the profane, and the clean and the unclean, just as Aaron and his sons did in Leviticus 10:10. And to revisit Leviticus 10:10, it says, "And that ye may put difference between holy and unholy, and between unclean and clean." And we see the same thing in Ezekiel 44:23. "And they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and profane, and cause them to discern between the clean and unclean and the clean." At the end of the millennium, people will truly have been given every chance to learn and accept the truth, thanks to those who teach the word. So that church is very important. That's a very important duty. Now we're going to turn to the Levitical musicians. The second group of temple servants David named by course was the musicians. This group is the type of, or foreshadowing of, the church of Smyrna. The Levitical musicians were an important part of Israel in the Old Testament. They're mentioned before the first temple was even built, in connection with bringing up the Ark of the Covenant. 1 Chronicles 15, 16, and 17 first identifies the three branches of Levitical singers and musicians together. Verse 16 reads, "And David spake to the chief of the Levites to appoint their brethren to be the singers with instruments of music, psalteries, and harps and cymbals, sounding by lifting up the voice with joy." So the Levites appointed Heman the son of Joel, and of his brethren, Asaph the son of Berechiah, and of the sons of Merari their brethren, Ethan the sons of Cushiah. Ethan is also called Jeduthun elsewhere in the Bible. Heman, Asaph, and Jeduthun, or Ethan, were patriarchs of the three groups of temple singers. These names and branches are important. We learned that the named courses of the priests were all Kohathites, and more specifically of the sons of Aaron. But the singers and musicians came from all three branches of Levites, which are the Kohathites, the Gershonites, and the Merarites. Heman was of the Kohathite line, was actually Samuel's grandson. 1 Chronicles 6:32-33 says, "And they ministered before the dwelling place of the tabernacle of the congregation with singing, until Solomon had built the house of the Lord in Jerusalem. And then they waited on their office according to their order. And these are they that waited with their children. Of the sons of the Kohathites, Heman, a singer, the son of Joel, the son of Shemuel." Shemuel is another spelling of Samuel. 1 Chronicles 6:34, the son of Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Eliel, the son of Toa. Elkanah was Samuel's father, and you can read all about him in 1 Samuel chapter 1. Heman's name means faithful. The musical leaders all had psalms that were associated, either written for them or by them. I think there are differences of opinions on whether they were written by them or for them. Psalm 88 is associated with Heman. Asaph was a Gershonite. We can see Asaph's genealogy in 1 Chronicles 6:39-43. I'm not going to read all the names, but you can see in verse 43 that his genealogy goes back to Levi through Gershon. Asaph's name means collector. He's associated with 12 psalms. I'm not going to read them, but they're all listed for you. Ethan or Jeduthun was of the Merarite line, and that's shown in 1 Chronicles 6:44, which says, "And their brethren, the sons of Merari, stood on the left hand. Ethan, the son of Kishi, the son of Abdi, the son of Melech." Ethan means permanent, and Jeduthun means laudatory. Ethan/Jeduthun is associated with Psalms 38, 61, and 76. First Chronicles chapter 25 gives in great detail the list of servants who played music and what their duties were. Music was an incredibly important part of the temple. I'm not going to cover all the names and courses, but I will cover verses 1 through 8. Verse 1 reads, Moreover, David and the captains of the priests of the hosts separated to the service of the sons of Asaph and of Heman and of Jeduthun, who should prophesy with harps and with psalteries and with the cymbals. And the number of workmen according to their service was of the sons of Asaph, Zachar and Joseph and Nethaniah and Asarela, the sons of Asaph under the hands of Asaph, which prophesied according to the order of the king. So here we have 4 of the courses of Levitical musicians that came from Asaph. Of Jeduthun, the sons of Jeduthun, Gedaliah and Zeri and Jeshiah, Hashabiah, and Mattathiah, 6 under the hands of their father Jeduthun, who prophesied with the harp and gave thanks and praise to the Lord. And here we have 6 courses of Levitical musicians from Jeduthun. And of Heman, I'm not going to read all these names, but there were 14 courses from Heman. All these were the sons of Heman's king, the king's seer, in the words of God, to lift up the horn. And God gave to Heman 14 sons and 3 daughters. All these were under the hands of their fathers for song in the house of the Lord. Cymbals, psalteries, harps, for the service of the house of God, according to the king's order, Asaph, Jeduthun, and Heman. Verse 7, So the number of them with their brethren that were instructed in the songs of the Lord, even all that were cunning, was 268. So that would be 288. Note the word cunning. That means they knew what they were doing. They were talented. And we have the same thing today in the temple musicians, in the spiritual house of the end times. And they cast lots, word against word, as well the small as the great, the teacher as the scholar. So let's back up a little. Verse 1 says they should prophesy with harps, with psalteries, and cymbals. Verse 2 says the sons of Asaph prophesied according to the order of the king. Verse 3 says the son of Jeduthun prophesied with the harp and to give thanks and praise to the Lord. Verse 5 calls Heman the king's seer in the words of God. And that word seer is related to visions. And he was to lift up the horn. These 3 branches represent a type for the musicians of today. So hold on to that thought of the 3 branches. We're going to touch on that again. Let's take a look now at what prophecy in connection with the musicians in our Father's house was and is. The words prophesy and prophesied in 1 Chronicles 25 are all translated from Strong's Hebrew 50:12. Sometimes when we think of prophecy, we think of prophets like Jeremiah or Ezekiel or Hosea, and it means to speak or sing by inspiration, in prediction or simple discourse. There aren't any more prophets like there were in the Old Testament. So today this word is referring to speaking or singing by inspiration. Both teaching and singing in our Father's house have been going on for decades now in these end times. The work of the singers is foreshadowed in the temple musicians of old. That's their God-given job, and they deserve to be loved and respected for that. The word prophesy that's used to describe the work of the temple singers is the very same word used in Joel 2:28. Joel 2:28 to 32 describes the outpouring of our Father's Spirit in the last days. So let's read that. Verse 28 says, And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. That means they will speak and sing by inspiration. Those 2 things, teaching and singing, correspond with the 2 churches, speaking through the teaching of the Word of God at Philadelphia, and singing through the Church of Smyrna. Now, teaching and singing is only part of the outpouring of the Holy Spirit as we see in these verses. We also know the Holy Spirit speaks through us when Satan is here. Continuing on with verse 29, and also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my spirit, and I will show wonders in the heaven and the earth, and blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and terrible day of the Lord. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as the Lord hath said, and as the remnant whom the Lord shall call. These two functions in God's house, teaching and music, were again the only two functions for which David named by name and course. No other type of servant was mentioned by name. There are other types of servants, treasurers, porters, but they weren't named in courses. They're types for the priests and the singers are types for the two churches or assemblies of called out ones in the temple of the end times. We all know where the teaching is, but do we know where the music is? There are musicians out there right now singing by inspiration, and they have been for decades. Now let's take a quick look at the instruments specifically named as being played in the temple. Some of the words have multiple meanings, so I just highlighted the meanings that apply to musical instruments. Cymbals means double tinklers, basically means cymbals. The psaltery takes a little bit of digging into. The Strong's word is 5035. It's usually translated psaltery, but is also translated viol in a couple places. My Strong's has a little misprint on this one. It omitted the number, so I just wrote it in. And it starts at the bottom of the page and continues on the next, so it's split into two. The word translated psaltery is 5035 navel, and it's also a lyre as having a body of like form. Here's the definition of psaltery in Smith's Bible Dictionary. I'm not going to read it all. What's very interesting is that it says the ancient viol was a 6-string guitar. So we've got 6-string guitars in the house of God, and we do today as well. Harp is translated from Strong's Hebrew 3568. 3658. I've got my numbers mixed up with one of those two. It means Kenor. It's pronounced Kenor, I think, and it's from an unused root meaning to twang, and it just means a harp. Horn is translated from Strong's Hebrew 7161. 7161 is a horn as projecting, by implication, a flask or a cornet. The horn or cornet was a trumpet-like instrument. So that was music in the first temple. The temple that was built during Solomon's reign. And again, David assigned both priests and musicians by course and by name. That's how important they were. We find something interesting with music in the Second Temple period. The books Ezra and Nehemiah document the rebuilding of the temple and the wall around Jerusalem when the remnant of the southern kingdom of Judah returned to the land. Remember, Ezra was of the sons of Aaron and taught the people God's word at the Watergate. Of the 3 original patriarchs of temple music, Asaph, Heman, and Jeduthun, only Asaph is mentioned prominently in the time of the Second Temple. Nehemiah 11:17 mentions one son of Jeduthun. There's no mention at all in Ezra or Nehemiah of the sons of Heman. And remember from 1 Chronicles 25, the sons of Heman made up 14 of the 24 courses of musicians in the First Temple. And again, Heman was of the Kohathite line, which was always in charge of the most holy things. So a very important part of temple worship was almost gutted. It was really the children of Asaph who ran the musical show in the Second Temple. Remember, too, Asaph only made up 24 of the 24 original courses. Ezra chapter 2 lists a group of captives who returned from Babylon to what was once the southern kingdom of Judah. You can see it says 128 of the children of Asaph were among that group. The singers, or Ezra 2:41 reads, the singers, the children of Asaph, 128. We have a good summary of the temple service in the Second Temple in the 12th chapter of Nehemiah. Let's read a few verses. Nehemiah chapter 12, verse 44 says, and at that time were some appointed over the chambers for the treasurers, for the offerings, for the first fruits, and for the tithes, to gather them out of the fields of the cities, portions of the law for the priests and Levites. For Judah rejoiced for the priests and the Levites that waited. There weren't any courses named either for the priests or the musicians at the second temple. And both the singers and the porters kept the word of their God, the word of purification, according to the commandment of David and of Solomon his son. For in the days of David and Asaph of old, there were chief of the singers and of the songs of praise and thanksgiving unto God. But again, a lot of the Heman is missing entirely, and there's perhaps one son of Jeduthun. And all Israel in the days of Zerubbabel and in the days of Nehemiah gave the portions of the singers and the porters every day his portion. And they sanctify the holy things unto the Levites, and the Levites sanctified them unto the children of Aaron. So again, the courses of the musician in the temple were nearly gutted by the second temple. They're not mentioned in the New Testament at all. There must have been some effort to execute the courses of the priesthood in the New Testament times. We've got Zacharias executing the course of Abiah in Luke chapter 1, and we know he was a legitimate priest, but by no means was every priest legitimate in Christ's time. It seems music was dead in the house of God, at least the music God appointed. Remember that thought because it connects with the church of Smyrna. Here's some other examples of music in the Bible. Aside from the tabernacle and the temple, Israelites played music and sang. And Israel was a very musical people, and it still is. In Exodus 15, the Israelites sang as they escaped Egypt by God's hand. Moses and Aaron's sister Miriam joined with them in the timbrel in verse 20. And Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out with her with timbrels and dances. A timbrel is basically a tambourine. In that verse, Miriam is called a prophetess, which incidentally is derived from the same word prophesy we discussed in connection with both the temple singers and Joel 2:28. Many people are familiar with the Song of Moses in Deuteronomy 32. Moses introduced the song at the end of Deuteronomy 31, and I'll just read a few verses. Deuteronomy 31:30 says, "And Moses spake in the ears of all the congregation of Israel the words of this song until they were ended." Then in chapter 32, "Give ear, O ye heavens, and I will speak, and hear, O earth, in the words of my mouth. My doctrine shall drop as the rain, my speech shall distill as the dew, as the small rain upon the tender herb, and as the showers upon the grass. Because I will publish the name of the Lord, ascribe ye greatness unto our God. He is the rock, his work is perfect, all his ways are judgment, a God of truth and without iniquity, just and right is he." Another example that sticks out to me is the company of musical prophets who met King Saul. At this time, God had just told Samuel to anoint Saul captain over his people to fight against the Philistines. God told Samuel in 1 Samuel 9:16, "Tomorrow about this time I will send thee a man out of the land of Benjamin, and thou shalt anoint him to be captain over my people Israel, that he may save my people out of the hand of the Philistines. For I have looked upon my people, because their cry is come unto me." A little bit later, Samuel tells Saul he'll meet a company of prophets. 1 Samuel 10:5 says, "After that thou shalt come to the hill of God, where is the garrison of the Philistines. And it shall come to pass, when thou art come hither to the city, that thou shalt meet a company of prophets coming down from the high place, with a psaltery and a tabret and a pipe and a harp before them, and they shall prophesy. And the Spirit of the Lord will come upon thee, and thou shalt prophesy with them, and thou shalt be turned to another man. And let it be when these signs are come unto thee, that thou do as occasion serve thee, for God is with thee." When the music played, the Spirit of God would come upon Saul, and he'd be turned into a new man, another man. That's pretty powerful stuff. The word prophesy is used twice again in that passage, and again, it's the exact same word prophesy used of the temple singers and used in Joel 2:28. And again, it means to speak or sing by inspiration and prediction or simple discourse. We also know that when David played the harp, it was healing to Saul, and the evil spirit left when David played. 1 Samuel 16:23 says, "And it came to pass, when the evil spirit from God was upon Saul, that David took a harp and played his hand. And so Saul was refreshed and was well, and the evil spirit departed from him." We all know that anything of God, Satan is going to mock. So music is no exception. So let's look at some of the ways that Satan messes with music. Music was used for evil purposes all the way back to Cain. The first mention of music in the Bible is in Genesis 4:21 in connection with the sons of Cain. Verse 21 reads, "And his brother's name was Jubal, and he was the father of all such as handle the harp and the organ." Take note of the word handle. In Genesis chapter 4, we have a picture of what the sons Cain do. That chapter specifically points us to look at how they use music. Many have glossed right over the word handle in verse 21 and jumped to the conclusion that Jubal was the father of music. But the Hebrew word that handle is translated from tells a very different story. That word is Strong's Hebrew 8610, and it means to manipulate, seize, capture, wield, overlay, use unwarrantably. The meaning of this word leaves little doubt that Jubal and his descendants did nothing good with music. We're warned of Jubal and his lineage because Satan always mocks that which is of God, and he continues to mock our father's music to this day. This also connects with the Church of Smyrna, because it's Jubal's descendants they have to deal with in their efforts to get music out there. It's another way for them to know about the synagogue of Satan. Daniel chapter 3 relays what is perhaps the strongest type or foreshadowing of what the worship of Satan will be like when he comes as Antichrist. We're told in that chapter not one, not two, not three, but 4 times that the people were to bow down or did bow down to Nebuchadnezzar's golden image when the music played. I'm going to read some of this chapter, the 4 places where music is talked about or highlighted. Daniel chapter 3, verse 1 says, "Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof was 6 cubits. And he set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent to gather together the princes, the governors, the captains, and the judges and the treasurers, the counselors and the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the province, to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar had set up." We've got pretty much everybody here. This is a huge event, and again, this foreshadows the time when Satan will be here. Verse 3, "Then the princes, the governors and captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the province were gathered together unto the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up." Chapter 4, verse 4. Then an herald cried aloud, "To you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king hath set up." This is the first time that our Father calls music to our attention in this chapter. A lot of people also like to take note that there are 6 instruments mentioned in this verse too. Daniel chapter 3 verse 6 says, "And whoso falleth down and worshipeth the same hour, shall the same hour be cast into the midst of a fiery furnace." Take note of this. This is a type of what will happen when Satan is cast out of heaven as Antichrist. Satan will have the music of the world at his big blasphemous party. Some musicians will refuse to play for him. Being cast into the fiery furnace should remind us of the Church of Smyrna being cast into prison. Therefore, at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and the languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. This is the second time our Father calls music to our attention in this chapter. Verse 8, wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. Satan sure loves to accuse. Don't we all know it? They spake and said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. So this is the third time our Father calls music to attention in this chapter. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, that he should be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. These three men should remind us of the three branches of temple musicians. I also believe both are connected to the three sons of Benjamin in 1 Chronicles 7:6, and also the prophecy Jacob gave to Benjamin in Genesis 49:27. That's another subject in itself, and I'll leave people to look into that if they want to. Then, verse 13, then Nebuchadnezzar in his rage and fury commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Satan was enraged that they didn't bow down, and it sounds like the music played more than once. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego already didn't bow down at least once, and Nebuchadnezzar is going to offer them another chance. Verse 14, Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now if you be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made. But if you worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? That's the fourth time that our Father calls music to our attention in this chapter. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we're not careful to answer thee in this matter. That means they didn't answer him lightly. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. Nebuchadnezzar was so enraged at their ritual to bow down that his countenance changed. And remember, Nebuchadnezzar is a sign of Satan. And of course, we know the rest of the story about God protecting Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. There are a couple other places we see people using music for evil purposes, and God isn't pleased with them. In Isaiah chapter 5, God's talking to the inhabitants of Jerusalem and the men of Judah, upset with them for destroying the vineyard he created, and the vineyard, of course, is symbolic. Woe unto them that rise up early in the morning, that they follow strong drink, that continue until night, till wine inflame them, and the harp, and the viol, and the tabret, and the pipe, and wine are in their feasts. But they regard not the work of the Lord, neither consider the operation of his hands. They were using instruments either for idolatrous purposes, or they just weren't, obeying God. In Amos chapter 6, Amos is talking to those who are at ease in Zion before the days of the kingdom of Judah's captivity. In Amos 6:5, he says, Woe to those that chant the sound of the viol and invent to themselves instruments of music like David. He's not pleased with those who chant to the viol and invent themselves instruments of music like David. David used music to worship God. God wasn't happy when his children used it for idolatrous reasons instead. As we just saw, Satan is going to use music for very idolatrous reasons. So let's return to the Church of Smyrna again. After having looked at the good and evil of music in the Bible, we need to go back there. Again, Revelation 2:8 says, "And unto the angel of the church of Smyrna write, These things saith the first and the last, which was dead and is alive." Think back to the Second Temple, when music in the temple had been nearly gutted, except for the sons of Asaph and maybe a descendant of Jeduthun. And then to the time of Christ walked the earth, when there's no music mentioned in the temple at all. Now in these end times, Christ, who is dead and rose again, has raised up a part of God's house that was dead. And it was dead for a long time. Verse 9, "I know thy works in thy tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan." So what would be the tribulation and poverty of the church of Smyrna? In my opinion, it's being cut off from the love of the brothers and sisters in Philadelphia. They're not known by us at all. They're not loved for who they are and what their work is. And we can see from looking back, their work is very important. It's a smaller church, and it has to feel lonely traveling around with not much fellowship, and the knowledge the other church they love doesn't love them back. It's a theme that runs through all their music, and it's very serious. Musicians battle other things too. As we saw, we were warned that the sons of Jubal would misuse music however they could. They have to fight that. Being in the spotlight can't be a picnic either. At least it sure wouldn't be for me. The Christ says of them, "But thou art rich." They're rich in knowledge and God's Spirit. Remember back to Samuel telling Saul the Spirit of the Lord would come upon him, and he would prophesy with them, and would be turned into another man. Remember, too, all that was said about the temple singers, who were very talented and also prophesied. And remember Joel 2:28. It says that our Father's children will prophesy, that they will speak and sing by inspiration in these end times. Verse 10, "Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that he may be tried, and you shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life." This brings us back to Daniel 3, where we saw a massive musical ensemble and 3 of God's men who refused to bow down when the music played, being thrown into the fiery furnace. Satan will cast some of Smyrna into prison for 10 days. Those 3 men in Daniel foreshadowed the 3 branches of temple music that was dead and is now alive. Verse 11, "He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. He that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death." Those who overcome won't be hurt of the second death, just as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego weren't hurt when Nebuchadnezzar, who was a type of Antichrist, threw them into the fiery furnace. Now we're up to the artists connected with the Church of Smyrna. The song clips that I'm going to go through are in no particular order, and these are just a fraction of examples from their work. This will not do them justice for the work they've put in over the years. Christ said, "I know thy works," to each of the 7 churches, and the Church of Smyrna has very much work to its credit. Most of these songs are from about 25 years ago, give or take a few years. Some are even older. Every one of these artists is still out there working, recording, and singing, with all the challenges those things pose. But I wanted to use these older songs to show how long they've been out there doing our Father's work. And I'm sorry to those I don't know of and who must be missing. I know there must be more of you. It feels like diminishing the songs to analyze them like this instead of just listening to them, but it's really the only way to show the who and the what. Keep in mind that artists use symbolism. Remember, it's not Smyrna's job to teach the word. They know the word, but their work and purpose is different. Not every song is about the Bible. They're out there singing to the world, and they observe the world as they see it. They move in different circles than just Philadelphia, and see a lot in their travels around the world to perform. They see and talk to different kinds of people. All these things shape people's opinions on things going on in the world. It's their job to sing to audiences. I'll try to hit on some of the common themes in their music, and some of it will speak to the tribulation and poverty of Smyrna, written of in Revelation 3:9. There are songs about knowing the false Christ, who again is Satan, comes before the true Christ. Jason Ringenberg is the Jason of Jason and the Scorchers. He's also he's got a long running solo career going. Under Your Command is a song off his album A Pocket Full of Soul. We can see that he knows that the first Christ, who makes everyone feel great about themselves, isn't the real Christ, and he'd better wait for the real one.
Got a pile of worldly goods too high to even lift, so I better drop and trade him all away for a hotel Bible and what it has to say. Here we go now. Under your command, Lord, under your command, I could build a monument from a pile of sand. Under your command, Lord, under your command, I could stare the devil down and never take his hand. Hey now, take a bow, it's only make-believe. Just when I think I'm the king, it's really time to leave. Better ask a question and better ask it fast, and put my face some better place that is bound to last.
Victoria Williams has a really beautiful spirit and just radiates our Father's love and joy like nobody else I've heard. In the intro to her song Lagniappe from her album Water to Drink, she explains that lagniappe is a Louisiana word that means a little something extra. It's a surprise. What's the surprise? She sets the subject at the beginning of the song.
God's will and all be done. Keep on praying out. What goes down is all I'm saying. Lagniappe, oh lagniappe.
And the song continues.
You think it's the end, just around the bend. Something that you never known, never been, never have imagined.
She's talking about the surprise that will come to most of the world after they've worshipped Satan. They think it's the end, but there's a surprise, which is the real Christ around the bend. Jacob Dylan is the singer and songwriter for the Wallflowers, and he does solo recordings too. On his album Breach, Hand Me Down is a fight song against the devil. In the beginning of the clip, you can hear him beating the war drums against the devil.
Been used by an army of kings, you've been touched by lips of a queen. Now we've all made good use of you, but you won't be needed again. So why don't you move and let someone else in, and make some room for a new Harlequin, 'cause you never know when you'll disappoint us again. Hand me down, it's better when you're not around. You feel good and you look like you should.
Lucinda Williams, in her song Get Right with God off of her album Essence, writes about asking God about his plan to save us all from the devil's slaughter. And most people who are watching this video know all about God's plan to save us from Satan's slaughter. Satan will spiritually slaughter most everyone in the world, sadly.
I asked God about his plan to save us all from Satan's slaughter. If I give up one of my lambs, will you take me as one of your daughters? 'Cause I won't get right with God. Yes, you know you got to get right with God. 'Cause
Willie Niles' album Beautiful Wreck of the World is just filled with biblical songs. One of those songs, called Bread Alone, pits a man so chilled by seeing the devil's handiwork that he finds himself shivering to the bone in the warm Gulf Stream waters.
Who are you to be blind to wonder? Who am I to be deaf and dumb? See the lightning, hear the thunder, feel the heat of the kingdom come. Lay me out in the Gulf Stream waters, see me shivering to the bone. Let me lie down at your altar. Men don't live by bread alone.
He's taking Christ's side against Satan. In Matthew chapter 4, Satan tried to tempt Christ. Verse 3 says, "And when the tempter came to him, he said, If thou be the Son of God, command these stones, that these stones be made bread. And Christ responded, But he answered and said, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God." And Christ was quoting Deuteronomy 8:3 right there. Van Morrison has written so many songs about the end and the Bible in general. His work goes back longer than most. His song, Rough God Goes Riding, from his album The Healing Game, talks about a time when the rough God is here and nobody can hide who they really are. And that's the way it's going to be when Satan is here and Christ returns. And incidentally, I think The Healing Game refers to the healing of the two churches.
And it's a matter of survival. When you're born with your back against the wall, won't somebody hand me a Bible? Won't you give me that number to call? Well, that rough God was riding, and that rough God goes gliding over the hiding.
Steve Forbert wrote an incredible, beautiful song of praise called I Will Sing Your Praise on his album Strange Names and New Sensations.
Who made the changing mood to work the way it does? And made a hummingbird fly.
his song God's Golden Eyes from Crossing Muddy Waters, John Hyatt writes of God's perfect plan in shaping his children. To their amazement and surprise, God has perfectly shaped his children just as he wanted us to be, until we're shining in the winds like diamonds when it's time to meet God.
Like babes we come whining for some forgotten sin, surprised to be shining just like diamonds in the wind. Every facet so perfect and every cut the proper size. When we find ourselves staring in God's golden eyes, we find ourselves staring in God's golden eyes.
There are so many songs among these folks that speak of sadness that comes with loving someone that doesn't love them back. And that's all about loving Philadelphia, who doesn't know who they are or love them back or what it takes to do the work they do. Bob Dylan wrote this in Trying to Get to Heaven from his album Time Out of Mind. If you're so inclined, check out Strong's Hebrew 5769, from which the whole album takes its title. This song is recorded in 1997 when Passovers were still held in Missouri.
When I was in Missouri, they would not let me be. I had to leave there in a hurry. I only saw what they let me see. You broke a heart that loved you.
In the same vein, Tom Waits wrote of the Grand Palace where Passovers were held at the time in his song House Where Nobody Lives from his album Mule Variations.
What makes a house grand? Oh, it ain't the roof or the doors. If there's love in a house, it's a palace for sure. But without love, it ain't nothing but a house where nobody lives.
Many songs speak of poison love, which is more on the pain of loving those who don't love back. These are songs of sorrow. This is not like, cool, I understand the lyrics. They're really expressing sorrow over this. They're very hurt. Buddy Miller's album Poison Love and his song with the same title convey that sentiment. I think Steve Earle also sings on this song.
Still my heart cries out for you, you alone, my darling, and begs to never ever let you go. But my pleadings have all been in vain for you and you alone, dear. And my better judgment tells me to say no. For your poison love has stained the lifeblood in my heart and soul, dear.
Buddy and his wife, Julie Miller, often sing together. Julie sings so beautifully of the next life in her song All My Tears from her album Broken Things.
When I go, don't cry for me. In my father's arms I'll be. The wounds this world left on my soul, I'll be healed and I'll be whole. Sun and moon will be replaced with the light of Jesus' face. And I will not be ashamed, for my Savior knows my name. It don't matter who buried me, I'll be home and I'll be free. It don't matter where I live, all my tears be washed away.
Emmylou Harris has also recorded Julie's song, and she also covered a song called Beyond the Great Divide, which was written by J.C. Crowley and Jack Ruth. The Great Divide is a symbol of those, in a lot of these songs, about the divide between the two churches. The song looks forward to the time when there will be no divide. sings of the day when there's peace in Jerusalem. This is from an album and a song both called Jerusalem. Of course, there's no peace in Jerusalem until Christ returns.
I woke up this morning and none of this was good. And dead machines were rumbling across the ground where Jesus stood. And the man on my TV told me it had always been that way. And there's nothing anyone could do or say. And I almost listened to him. Yeah, I almost lost my mind and I regained my senses again. Looked into my heart to find, and I believe that one fine day all the children of Abraham we lay down their souls forever in Jerusalem.
John Mellencamp sings of the last days when the world will pretend Jesus has come to take everyone out for fun in Miss Missy from his album John Mellencamp. I also recommend listening to Days of Farewell from the same album.
Good night, oh my Miss Missy. Good night, it's time to go home. Hey, I might, I just might call you later. Oh, Missy, it's time to go home. So let's dance slow just one more time. Let me hold your face close to mine, yeah. Let's pretend that Jesus has come to take us out one more night just for fun, yeah.
Keith Richards writes in the song 999 off of his album Main Offender of the end we're hurtling toward, when the world will mistake the lion for the lamb and won't get it or understand it until the true lamb returns.
The lion and the lamb are locked in an embrace. You won't get it till it's in your face.
I wanted to return to Bob Dylan because he's perhaps known the truth for longer than anyone I've mentioned, and he's cared about the divide between the two churches longer than I've even been an adult. This is the major theme of his entire album, Time Out of Mind. A couple lines from that album's song Million Miles really sum up the tribulation and poverty of Smyrna. They want love to support them in the places in the world they go to perform.
I need your love so bad, turn your land down low. I need every bit of it for the places that I go.
There's another thing to mention in connection with Bob Dylan and his son Jacob too. They come from Jewish backgrounds and they've been hurt a lot by people who think they're Kenites. Jacob sings in his song Sleepwalker.
It's where I'm from that lets them think I'm a whore. I'm an educated virgin.
I think we all know what it is to be a spiritual virgin in these end times, so that's really coming from a place of a lot of hurt. In his song Cry a While off of the album Love and Theft, Bob Dylan puts himself at direct odds with the bad seed. He clearly wants to distinguish himself from them. He's also been hurt very badly by people thinking he's a Kenite while he's tirelessly on the road doing God's work.
And I had to go down and see a guy named Mr. Goldsmith. Nasty, dirty, double-crossing, backstabbing, phony I didn't want to have to deal with.
Don't ask me to prove what I'm about to say. I can't. Sometimes our Father shows people things in mysterious ways. Bob Dylan is an Israelite indeed, and more specifically of the tribe of Benjamin. Naturally, that applies to Jacob Dylan too. The tribe of Benjamin's role in the end times would take a whole other study to delve into, but it's significant. Since Benjamin was the tribe our father gave to Judah when the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah split, it should be no surprise that some of Benjamin are today called Jews, and sadly they get mixed up with those of Revelation 2:9 and 3:9. Bob Dylan has a vast catalog of music about the Bible that goes back to when I was a child. He's no doubt been responsible for bringing many other musicians to the truth, and it wouldn't surprise me a bit to learn that he's the good fig for whom Smyrna is named. Christ warned us in Matthew 13 not to root up tares, lest we mistake wheat for tare. This is, in my opinion, the reason Revelation 3:7 says that Christ is the one who holds the key of David. Man isn't fit to hold it because we're liable to mess up on who we think the good seed and the bad seed are. He's got a very well-known song called Every Grain of Sand, and that song literally is the reason I started studying the Bible. And there's no better song than his Tweedledee and Tweedledum from the album Love and Theft to paint the clearest picture of who the two churches are now.
Living in the land of Nod, trusting our fate to the hands of God. They pass by so silently, Tweedledum and Tweedledee.
There's been a lot of hurt over the divide between the two churches. This brings us all to Christ's exchange with Peter in Matthew 18:21. Then came Peter to him and said, Lord, how oft shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Till 7 times? And Jesus saith unto him, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. The type or foreshadowing of the woman who has trouble bringing forth a child is repeated over and over and over again in the Bible. And so we see in the two churches that the woman who will bring forth Christ has had great trouble giving birth to Christ in this age. But again, Rachel's midwife told her way back in Genesis 35:17, Fear not, thou shalt have this son also. One last thing. Thank you, Willie Nile, for always choosing kindness. I hope our Father has a special place for you in the kingdom come. You leave me speechless, you make me laugh, and you make me weep for joy. I love you, my dear brother, who dares to love and loves to dare. Come on, the sun's shining.